Welcome back to episode 18. This is Squeezing the Plums, and my next guest is a wonderful bloke by the name of Mark Pasini. The main point of this conversation is around sobriety, and we really get into an understanding of, why Mark decided to become sober, at the age of 38, and what it has done for him in his life. For some people, it's cutting out alcohol. For other people, it's cutting out other addictions in their life or other things that have taken them down. So Mark's been super brave to come on and be able to share with you his story and what it's done for him in his relationships, his work, his physical health, and his mental health. Now, if you haven't, please subscribe to Squeezing the Plums. It makes all the difference, and it encourages more men and more guests to come onto this show and be able to share their experiences. Let's get to the show. Did you find it hard when you started speaking to your sister on a podcast?
I found she was really good, actually. She was very structured, and she had done a little bit of research about other people who had done sobriety, celebrities and everything like that, and the health benefits. So she came with a fair bit of knowledge about things, whereas Tully was more the conversationalist.
Yeah,
she was like, you'd say something and then she'd butt off from that, whereas Sarah would then have the structure of the conversation flowing like that. So
nice.
They did well. Yeah, I think they're doing very well between them.
You mentioned sobriety, and I'll get into that in this podcast. But a question I ask all my guests is before they come on is speaking about if they had 99% of the population wiped out and they were left with sort of 1% of the population to be given the opportunity to talk to, motivate, inspire, or help based off their knowledge. What would it be based off your experience that you'd help with? And when we spoke throughout the week, the thing that you said was sort of mentality and mindset. And how that relates to your quality of life. So is there anything that you can explain to us as to why that was important to you?
Oh, definitely. Look, I suppose it's taken me until I'm 38 now, and it's only been in the last year or so that this has come to head, that I've realised how important it is not to take life so seriously. I think I was stuck in that rut where I used to live in these future projections in my head, and that would cause myself anxiety day to day, and that would come out. I'd get a lot of it'd show in my body. I'd have a lot of dandruff, a lot of psoriasis. Like it'd physically come out of my body.
Yeah, right.
And so, I went on a retreat with my wife last June. I'm pretty sure it was. And one of the first things that we got told at the retreat was that we're going to have a lot of time to do nothing to ourselves. And I used to hate that. I used to always have to be on the go. Like I used to have to have an activity planned in the, for that day. I had to have my day kind of structured. And when they said that, we're going to have a lot of downtime, time to ourselves, time to do nothing, time to reflect, I was like, shit, like, how am I going to do this? It sounds terrible. And so throughout the retreat, there was a lot of downtime, like I said, and I'm kind of stuck here.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Well, let's say you're in the retreat, and what was the purpose of the retreat? Because you said that, obviously, that you did the retreat, you come across mindset and mentality a year ago, you go on the retreat.
Yes.
And that sort of is helping to form that understanding of how important that is based off your quality of life.
Yes, yeah. So the retreat, it was a couples retreat, but it wasn't work on your relationship kind of thing. It was a work on yourself kind of retreat. So it was, I work on myself, Ash works on herself, and then together it all comes together. And so we did a lot of sorry, I've really stumbled here.
No, that's fine.
I've really stumbled.
Well, you know what? This is really interesting because no one knows, but you worked at, what time did you start this morning?
1 o'clock.
1 a.m.
Sorry.
And that's fine. And the beauty about this whole thing is that when people come on, like, how many podcasts have you done in your life? One.
Yeah.
Right. And that
with
was
my sister.
With your sister. So now you're in a podcast with, big stage and everything. You're with a mate or with a friend or a person that you've never really spoken to about this type of stuff before. So it's really hard. I might flip the question then for you.
Okay.
Right. Why is it important that mindset is one of the biggest factors for quality of life in your history and your experience?
Well, in my history, like I said, living projections in your head that never eventuate never does you any good. All it does is do you harm. And so I've learned to live more in the moment and just live now.
Great.
I don't really think about the past anymore because the past has happened and you can't change the past. The future will happen, but all you can really control is right here, right now. And so, like I said to you earlier, I get to coach my son's under-9 football team and also having 3 kids at home growing up. This is something that, like I said, it's taken me 38 years to discover, not to take life so seriously and to live more present in the moment. And so I'm trying to teach my kids and also the kids that I get the opportunity to coach how important it is, not to worry about things that you have absolutely no control over and things that most likely will not even happen. So
how do you find, one of the biggest anxiousness I had as a kid when I was playing footy was the desire to win.
Yeah.
And I was anxious because I was like, we have to win. If we don't win, we don't get into the grand final, right? And so you're coaching a bunch of under-9s that are, most likely if they're under your tutelage, want to win, right?
Yeah.
So how do you start to implement that idea of being present and also encouraging the motivation to get out there and want to win? Because it's a really hard balance to make.
It is. We're lucky at this age we don't actually keep score. We don't officially keep scores, but we do keep scores. And mind you, the kids, they know exactly what the scores are regardless if there's a scoreboard or not. They know what the scores are.
Yeah.
It's more setting themselves personal goals, I suppose. It's there's kids in the team that are always going to be good. So you've got your good players and they're always going to continue on being good. The challenge for me as a coach is getting those kids that struggle a little bit to get them up to that level. Not necessarily up to the good kids level, but get them that little bit better, which helps the team. And so I set them little goals. If there's a kid that hasn't had a kick for a week or two, his aim is to get a kick, and that's what they focus on instead of, the end outcome of the game. It's more about what they can do to contribute to help the team.
That's massive because that simple thing applies to everything.
Yes.
There's a book out there, I think it's called Mini Habits, right? And everyone always talks about looking at the top of the mountain and then having to, it's just overwhelming for someone that can't kick a kick of the footy to think about kicking 3 goals.
That's exactly right.
So you go, well, let's break it down to as much as we can.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how do we get a kick? Well, you can fucking kick it off the ground.
Yeah.
You can run through the middle of the pack and try to get your foot on the ball. You can grab the ball and kick it to your friend, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Find a way. I guess, one of the things that then relates to, and I know with your story, is the idea of you now being sober for a period of time and why that's important and everything like that. I guess I'd love to know for you, when this came about for you, the mindset you had to adopt to be able to go from someone that would be relatively social and drink socially to deciding that, yep, this is not serving me and I'm going to just, whether it was cut it or slowly get rid of it.
Yeah, so a little bit of background. I was that, social binge drinker, I suppose they're called. You're going out on a Saturday night with all your friends and you'd have a good time and you'd, go out drinking from, say, 8 o'clock until 2 a.m, whatever. Wake up the next day feeling like shit, rinse and repeat. You do that over and over. And the older I got, I never drank throughout the week, or very rarely drank throughout the week. And it was more in social settings. So even on the weekends, it wasn't every weekend I was drinking. It was more going out in those social settings. And so it was prior to the retreat, I decided I wanted to back right off and not drink leading up to the retreat. And then I met, it was Belinda Anderson's retreat that we went on. Her husband, Darren, was an ex-NRL player. So he played professional rugby. Big manly man, buff, good-looking dude, everything like that. And he'd stopped drinking for about 8 months before the retreat, I think, at that stage. And I was, sober curious. And so during the retreat, we struck up quite a friendship. And I was saying to him, how do you go out in social settings? Like, do you still go out in social settings? And because I didn't really have too many prior to the retreat. And he said, look, you do. You still go out with your mates. You still go to the pub, you know. You're the one who's driving. Or, you know that when you go out, I've found that myself, when you go out, I'm still having the same conversations with the same people, you know, but I'm just waking up the next day feeling so good, you know. I don't have that hangover. I've got the 3 kids at home to look after the next day as well. So I know in the back of my mind how good I'm going to feel that next day.
Yeah.
And so that's my mindset going into it. We've had weddings, we've had engagement parties. We don't skip any social events because Ashley's not drinking as well. We don't skip any social events because we're non-drinkers now. You know, I actually enjoy it even more, to be honest, because you don't forget the nights.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. Some nights you want to forget.
Some nights you might
But it's
want to
probably
forget.
because of alcohol in the first place.
Yeah.
How old's your oldest kid now?
Bo is nearly 9.
Okay, and you're 38. So let's go into your 20s.
Yes.
And drinking in your 20s, because I mean that's where for most people it starts, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when you get kids into the dynamic, everything changes a little bit.
Yeah.
You can go either more or less. Some people find.
Yes.
But I'd love to know prior to the kids, you know, was alcohol and drinking in the binge variety, or was it like come home from a hard day at work, have a few beers, and that was a consistency?
No, like I said, it was more the social binging, and it was binging. It was, you know, would go out pretty much every Saturday night, sometimes Friday and Saturday nights, and it was pre-drinks at someone's house. You go out, you go to the club, you drink until, you know, the lights come on, stumps, you know, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever. But then you had that next day to recover. You know, you'd sit at home under the blankets watching a movie, eating KFC, you know, stuff like that, which is something that you can't do now. So, yeah, look, I don't regret anything that I've done, you know, leading up to this point now, because they're all the decisions that I made. And I had a great time doing what I did in my 20s and everything like that. But when you do become a parent, you know, everything does change. You're not just living life for you, you're living life for these kids as well. So,
and obviously then, you know, you've had the three beautiful kids, and you know, there was not a distinct thing where it was like, I've had a child, I'm going to stop drinking.
No, well, it's quite the opposite. When you have a kid, like the typical Aussie culture, what do you go and do? You wet the baby's head. You know? You go out and you celebrate.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing the boys did. They came over with a heap of cigars and a bottle of Johnny Blue, and that's what we did.
I fucking did that literally 3 weeks ago. So
yeah,
anyways.
But, you know, with one kid, you can kind of get away with it.
Mm.
And then the second kid, my wife will actually say that after our second kid, I probably went downhill a bit more. I went out more because I find that going from 1 kid to 2 kids it's a massive jump for, you know, it's so much harder than just having 1 kid to look after. That second kid throws in a whole new dynamic to the family. And so I probably rebelled a little bit more, went out more when I probably shouldn't have, you know, which put a little bit of a strain on our relationship at times. And so it wasn't until, after baby number 3 is when I started really reining things in.
I guess, you know, your catalyst in combination with maybe a couple of other things, but is kids. For other people, it might be they have a dependent, you know, that might be like an elder person in their life, or it might be a job they can't facilitate, you know, and they're just coming home and they're absolutely wrecked. And so they can see alcohol as a couple of things. 1, to enjoy, 2, to escape.
Yes.
Did that sort of idea of joy and escape come for you? And was, you know, in the 20s, it sounded like joy. It's like you go out, you come out with your mates, you go to fucking Prince of Wales, you know, John Corse is in the background playing a belter tune.
How can you not?
And you've been free pouring vodka for pre-drinks for the last fucking 3 hours.
Cloudy apple and vodka.
Cloudy apple and vodka. You've rocked up and you've probably got a little bit of extra vodka in the pocket. You've gone in there and you partied hard. So that and the joy was almost worth the pain after. You can sort of balance it out, right?
Yeah.
But then there's this idea of escapism, and so was that a realistic thing for you when you decided that when kids started to get involved? Was it an idea of going, fuck, I need to just take time away, or was it still the joy side of things?
Yeah, like I said, probably after baby number 2, it might have been a touch of escapism. Things get tough and you think, shit, what am I going to do? I'll go out and get blind.
It fucking happens. Yeah,
and you don't think about the consequences because you just want to escape and you want to be in that moment. That's what you're aiming to do. But I can see I was never one to get home after work really and knock the top off and have to, escape in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I found it.
Yeah.
It was more in your 20s. It was like you said, it's going out to drink and have fun with your mates, and then when family starts to happen and shit starts getting real, that's when you kind of use alcohol to escape a little bit more.
I think the fact that you have the courage to sort of say that is really important, because there will be other blokes that feel the exact same, and they listen to it and they go, yeah, look, I'm not where I want to be potentially, or I've got commitments that are beyond my level of experience or expectation.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck, how can I it doesn't have to be necessarily numb, but it's like just an accompaniment. It's like
it slows you down a little bit.
It slows you down. And I guess what I'd like to go deeper in, if you allow me to, and you don't have to, is some people hit a certain point where they realize that this is not good. Was there a point for you where you were like, okay, like reflecting back on it now, this is not good and I need to fucking change quick smart?
There was one night in particular, my wife and I had quite a big blue, and it was amplified because both of us had been drinking, no doubt about that. And so it wasn't the next day I stopped, but it's the more you reflect on what caused that to happen and what made it blow up to what it was. That is, the more you look back at it, you think, how differently we could have handled things. But you throw alcohol into the situation and things just, shit hits the fan real quick.
Yeah.
You say things that you don't mean, you do things that that you wouldn't typically do. You're not thinking straight. And
I think a lot of people go through that at some point, whether it's like you see people blow up. I was dating a girl last year and we were good, but every time we drank together, and I will say probably mainly her, not just from a factual point of view, but we found a way to get in an argument every single fucking time.
Yeah.
I've never had arguments before, and like it was just the chemistry of that was just too much.
Yeah.
And blew up, and in public too. Like mine was horrible. I was at a fucking festival with like 5 of my really good mates.
Yeah.
Just barking at each other.
It's funny you say that because that was something that my wife and I we recognised that problem before. It was when we were drinking together in the same environment. That's when it was bad. If say I had friends over and I was drinking and my wife wasn't drinking, things were fine. But it's when we mix this together, when we're both drinking together, having a night out or something like that, you just find yourself in some stupid petty argument, which would just, spill into something else.
And so I guess, you've had this, let's say you've had this sort of crescendo, you've had this big fuck off argument where, you're going through it, and whether it's ego holding you through the argument or whether it's the fact that you actually think you're fucking right and you're like, no, you're actually wrong, which doesn't tend to work for us guys very well anyways. There are a lot of people that then have that happen to them and then don't resolve the matter.
Yeah.
Right? And that can be through a number of reasons. How do you go about the next stage of going, this is fucked, this has happened, I need to make sure, you've got beautiful kids at home, I need to mend this.
Yeah.
How do you go about, especially being the man, taking a step forward and mending it? Or was it something where, actually.
No, you do. You got to step up. You got to, you know, realize what you've done and admit that you might have been at fault. You got to balls up. Like you got to admit sometimes that you are the cause. You know, you can't put all the blame on someone else. You have to accept what you've done. And so, I think, using the word accept, I was talking to my wife the other day. I said the only way for anyone to move forward with anything is acceptance and forgiveness. I said, you need to accept that whatever has happened has happened. I said, and then you need to forgive. You either forgive yourself, you can forgive the other person, you forgive the universe, you forgive whatever. Because if you don't accept that, you know, something's happened, and if you don't forgive it for happening, it's always going to get stuck in your head. I said, that's the only way to move forward. And I suppose that's what we did without even realizing it. You got to, you know, we both accepted that, you know, alcohol wasn't good for our relationship. We both obviously forgave each other, but we never sat down and said, hey, let's stop drinking. It just, you know, it kind of started, and then she found that retreat that was coming up, and she goes, oh, would you be interested in doing this retreat with me? And I said to her, yeah, sure. And she's like, what? I said, yeah, like, I'll do it, no worries. And she goes, would you really do it? I said, why are you so surprised? Like, yeah, of course I'll do it. You know, if it's something that you want us to do, it's something that I want us to, you know, to build on as well. I said, of course I'll do it. So that's when I thought it was some sort of couples retreat, you know, at first. But then the more I looked into it, the more comfortable I got with it, because it wasn't, you know, go in and, you know, do all these, you know, what do they call it, woo-woo things or whatever.
Shit.
All that woo-woo shit. Even though we ended up doing a bit of woo-woo shit, and I'm fully woo-woo myself now. Like, you know, it's hooked me. But I don't think it is woo-woo now. I think it's just, you know, a way of life. But, yeah, I'm so glad we did it. So glad we did it.
So obviously at that point, you know, you spoke about meeting the guy that played NRL. You were still drinking at that point?
No, I'd stopped for probably a month leading up to that, I'd say. But I had definitely backed off. Like, I was only having a couple of glasses of wine, going out for dinner with friends. 38 now, there's no real going out Saturday nights and partying and doing all that kind of stuff.
Mate,
so,
your 40th season's coming around pretty soon.
I know. And we're still, you know, got a few friends getting married, you know, a bit later on in life and everything like that. So we've got weddings and engagements and everything like that. But, yeah, I'd stopped for probably 3 to 4 weeks. And like I said, I was sober curious. And then once I spoke to Darren, and he kind of shed a bit of light on how, you know, how positive it's impacted his life. I mean, you look at the guy, he's 50 years old and he's chiseled. Like, he looks good, and you think, you know, well, when I'm 50, what do I want to look like? How do I want to be? And so, yeah, speaking to him was a really big motivator for me. And from then on, I haven't looked back. I haven't even been tempted to have a drink. Physically, it's helped me so much with my sleep. Like, sleep's at a premium for me. I work at nights, every single night. So I've stopped drinking coffee. I still have a bit of tea, so it's got that little bit of caffeine in it. But coffee, I've stopped drinking. My quality of life is better with my sleep. My mental clarity is just so much better. I'm a lot more sharp, even though it might not seem like that at the start of the show. You know, I am a lot more sharp than what I was, and which I have to be, because, you know, when you've got work to front up to every day, you can't be doing it, you know, coming off an oily rag. That's how sharp I am.
Yeah.
You can't front up and be a boss at work, feeling hungover, looking like shit, smelling like shit, you know. So,
you know, I want to get into that woo-woo spiritual stuff in a second, because, you know, a lot of blokes that are hitting their 30s now, and I know that you've listened to my first podcast, but when I did my spiritual, let's say, experiences that I went through, all the blokes were way older than I was.
Okay.
Yeah, way older.
Yeah.
You know, mid-40s, 50s, and I'm thinking, what the fuck are they doing in here?
Yeah.
They're at the wrong place. You know, I expected a bunch of 20-year-old hairdressers to come through, and it was 50-year-old CEOs. And I think there's something for, blokes that are moving through that stage of their life to look into. But one thing that I wanted to demonstrate or speak about, was around the quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you started to make those decisions, obviously now reflecting back on it a year later, you're like, better mental clarity, can show up better for other people, physically in better shape, sleeping better.
Yeah.
But before most people go up, they go down. Was there any of that for you? Like, when you're transitioning, because when I transitioned from no coffee for the last 18 months, the first month was fucking hard.
Yeah.
Right. Was that transition for you hard, or were you like, nah, I'm in it, let's go?
Look, it wasn't easy, but I'm not going to say it was the hardest thing I've ever done either. I've definitely done harder things throughout my life. Like, I've pushed myself to the limit physically doing challenges and stuff like that. So giving up coffee, it didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal to me, even though I was having, 4 to 6 double shots every single night at work. I think I didn't go backwards. Everything just seemed to move forwards. Like, you did 1 week without alcohol, 1 week without coffee, and you feel good. And then you roll on to that second week, and then you feel good after that second week. And it's just a big flow-on effect. Like, it kind of snowballs. And you think, why wouldn't I want to feel good the next week, and then the next week, and the next week? And if I feel good now, how good am I going to feel in 6 months' time, 12 months' time?
Have you inspired any of your mates to maybe look at a similar route?
I have, actually. And it's funny because a lot of people thought that my mates would kind of turn on me and be like, what are you doing? Because when we used to go out, I was the one that used to do the stupid shit, to be honest. Like,
Guilty.
Well, there was always the one friend that used to go out and get naked, or like I said, I'd do the stupid shit. The boys would say, Mark will do it, so whatever. And so when I said to them that I'm not going to drink anymore, they're like, well, is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, no, everything's great. And they're like, well, why? What's wrong? I said, nothing's wrong. It's just, it's a choice that I've made. And they didn't really probe me too much further until, probably 3 to 4 months down the track into it. A few of the boys would come up to me and they'd be like, so how are you feeling? Like, they'd get more inquisitive about the whole sobriety kind of thing. I said, mate, I feel fantastic. Talk about all the physical aspects of it, the mental aspects. They're like, oh yeah. They're like, they start getting that sober curious. And then I've got a mate of mine who I've been friends with since, primary school. We've grown up playing footy together and everything like that. He's a firefighter and he used to be a tradie, all this kind of stuff. And me and him used to muck about heaps. And I caught up with him not long ago and he's like, I've stopped drinking. He goes, I think he had about 8 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that off the drink. I said, that's fantastic. He goes, I haven't stopped drinking. He goes, I'm just having a period off the drink. I said, that's fine, mate. I said, how come? And he goes, I kind of inspired him to do that. And then it was the same kind of thing. Once he got that, sense of feeling good after going to an event one weekend and not drinking, you get addicted to that feeling of feeling good, I suppose.
And that comes in different shapes and forms for people. So for you, it may have been cut out drinking for a period of time, see how you feel.
Yeah.
For other people, it might be cut out watching television, see how you feel. It might be, cut out a certain friend in your life, see how you feel.
Yeah.
And this is the most important thing, is that quite often we get fixated on, maybe it's this, but people need to try for themselves.
That's right.
And for you, it was this.
What's the old saying? If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to have, they want to live some sort of different life, but continue doing the same shit, So it's pretty simple. If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Let's talk about nothing changes, nothing changes. So you went and you decided to do this retreat and all of a sudden all this woo-woo shit starts to come out.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, here we go. What was your idea of what woo-woo was prior? And it can be anything, right? And then what was it that you did that brought out a different sense of thought for you around it?
Well, everyone just kind of thinks of spirituality as, hippie kind of shit, I suppose. They think that, everyone's got dreadlocks, everyone's, running around the forest naked, touching each other and anything like that. So it hasn't happened yet. Might happen. I don't know.
If you get back on the piss, maybe.
Maybe. It happens when you're on the piss, doesn't it? But we did a sound healing session in particular. So we'd done a few things throughout the retreat, but nothing too woo-woo. We'd done a bit of, hot cold therapy, yin yoga, all those kind of things, bit of meditation. I'd never been one to be able to meditate because A, I didn't know how to meditate, and B, I thought that I wasn't able to meditate because my mind was racing so fast, and I was always, thinking about things in the future. And so when we did our first meditation session, Belinda said to us, you're going to think throughout this. It's okay to think. I was like, hold on, you're meditating. You're not meant to be thinking. She goes, no, you realize that you are thinking. You get that thought, you send it away, and then you focus on what you are focusing on throughout your meditation. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's how you meditate. And so the first time I did it, I think I got into that zone, where you're kind of falling asleep, but you're not meant to fall asleep, and you know what it's like.
Yep.
So I got there the first time, and I thought, well, that was nice. I enjoyed that. And then the next night we did a sound healing session. And so we actually did a bit of breath work leading up to it. And I'd never done breath work before. And they said, look, we're going to do 10 minutes of some pretty intense breath work here. They said, this is how you're going to breathe. This is what might happen.
Was it in through the mouth, out through the mouth, or was it nose, mouth?
This was mouth.
Mouth. So this is the most intense type.
This was mouth.
Yeah.
And it was like hard. You have to breathe hard. And it was they said, look, they can do it for up to half an hour. They said, we'll do 10 minutes of this. They said, but, we're going to warn you, you might have a purge. Some people might throw up. Some people might cry. Some people might scream. They said they've had some people orgasm. They said it will come out of you whichever way it has to come out of you. And so...
Please tell me you orgasmed or something crazy.
Oh, mate.
You're like, not on camera.
No. I broke down. I started bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
I don't know how long into it was, but it was bizarre. Like, we were breathing hard and heavy. And I just had this feeling that I had to cry. And I couldn't, it wasn't just a little weep. It was like, bawl your eyes out. And so I was bawling my eyes out. This was before the sound healing even started. And so that's happened. And then they talk you through it and they get you into that meditative state. And then they start off with the clay bowls and everything like that. And as soon as the clay bowl started, it was fucking, I can't explain exactly what happened, but I'll tell you a story at the end of this as well. But it was an out-of-body experience. It was like you're there, but you're not there. And you can feel everything vibrating through you, going from left to right, up, down. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing colours. It's like I was tripping, on acid or something like that. And so the session went for maybe an hour and a half, I think. It was a long, long session. But it felt like it went for about 10 minutes. It was just... started, and I didn't want it to finish, to be honest. It was amazing. And afterwards, I went up to the people who were running the session, and they started hugging me. And they're like, "How are you feeling?" I'm like, "Oh, that was insane." They said, "That got you really good, didn't it?" I said, "Were you shining lasers or something throughout the room?" They said, "No." They said, "What did you see?" I said, "Well, it started off, blue lasers going through here, and then they turned purple and rah. They said, like you were tripping on something? I said, exactly like I was tripping on something. And I don't know what I was doing physically, but they said, we could tell we were getting to you. We could tell like it was having some sort of an effect on you. And then I was talking to Matty, the guy that was doing it, afterwards, because he used to be a tradie. I said, how did you get into all of this, mate? And he goes, it's going to sound stupid. He goes, but the first time I did it, he goes, they started doing the clay bowls. He goes, it's going to sound ridiculous. He goes, but it felt like I was sitting in the corner of, up in the ceiling, looking down at my body. I said, whoa. I said, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to sound stupid. I said, that is exactly how I felt, And to this day, I don't know what happened, but I've since learnt more about, you know, the universe and vibrations and how everything's vibrating and how, you know, how it affects us from day to day. And that's really, that's why I want to learn more about it.
You can see how people, once they try something like that and they experience a different sense of themselves or connectedness, right, with themselves and everything around them, how that stuff can be like wildly fascinating.
Oh yeah.
Because it brings out a version of you probably have never seen or felt or experienced before.
Never. Yeah.
And the thing is, we've got the five senses, and then it's almost like you sense something else.
Yes.
And it's like, what the fuck is that? And that's kind of like spirituality.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it annoys the shit out of me. I don't know if you say this, and when people are like, I'm spiritual, you're like, fuck off, mate. It's like, you know, being spiritual is not a label. The way I've always thought about it and described it is like, you know, if you go into an orchestra, right? You got one person that's playing a beautiful like instrument perfectly, right? That's one element of you.
Yes.
But if you've got the whole orchestra playing in symphony, then that is like spirituality, because everything is connected.
Yes.
And everything is moved, but it's not just one thing. It's like the experience of that brings out something very, very different in you. Inside and outside. And so I guess once that's happened now, and it happened last year for you, how do you then comprehend all of that and then not try to, but look at ways of being able to encompass what you've learnt into day-to-day life?
Yeah, so looking more into it and looking into how everything is vibration, and, you know, everything, I suppose it comes back to, it's pretty basic, the law of attraction. You know, what you put out is what you get back. And that's how I try to basically live my life. Like, it's, you know, if you're walking around feeling depressed, everything's, you know, heavy on you, that's how life is going to perceive. If that's how you perceive life, that's how life is going to come back at you. Whereas if you, you know, put your positive vibes out to the universe and, you know, you live this happy-go-lucky kind of life, then that's what's going to come back to you. If you see the good in things, the good things are going to come back to you as well. So
yeah, it's that idea of like when you look at someone or you judge someone, generally it's a mirror.
Yes.
You know, and so if I, you know, see someone that's wearing an assembly label top and jeans, I'm like, fuck, mad cunt. Just well. Hopefully it's the same back. But it's that idea of, you know, when you actually genuinely look at someone and the thought pops into your head, generally it's a version of yourself or a mirror of yourself that will come back and give you some insight. And that insight you can hold on to for a period of time. And you can sit with it and you go, why did I view that person or that thing or that event in a certain way?
That's true. Yeah.
You know, and then that gives you a clue as to what you should work on to make yourself feel in a certain way so that the energy you put out is better. Right? And that's where I think people get mucked up. It's like, I have to pretend. It's like, no, you take note. And then you reflect. And then you go, okay, what kind of version is the best version of me that would show up in that time so that I can start to build that quote unquote energy, quote unquote frequency up. But it's hard, right? It's hard because you get all these thoughts. Did you ever experience, I know for me what I do, but when you start having thoughts that are not, I guess, reflecting of the actual way you want to think or feel, how do you get rid of those thoughts in the moment?
Good question. I suppose it's more when you got to bring yourself back to that particular moment, I think, because I find it's when your thoughts start racing, that's when you start making up stories. You know what I mean? So if you stay present and you judge things for as they are at that particular moment, you're not going to be, you know, you're not going to judge that person further down the track. You're going to judge them for who they are, what they are right now at this particular moment.
That's really good. You know, and that idea of, you know, you said at the very beginning, coming back to being present is super important. To get to the stage where you are at now and you've got, you know, a few kids, your quality of life is obviously improved. What are the other areas now that you've worked on your mindset, a bit of your spirituality and how you sort of look at life?
Yeah.
What are other aspects of quality of life that maybe people that are wanting to improve could look at to help better themselves?
I think particularly the older that we get, you got to start thinking. You say about not thinking into the future. You need to put money in the bank now. So I'm heavily invested in. I go to the gym, 6 days a week. You got to look after yourself physically. I think if you look after yourself physically, so whether that be working out at the gym, going for walks, going for runs, whatever you can do, that's money in the bank. If you want to live until my grandparents are in their 90s now, and because they've kept themselves physically fit all through their life, they live independently. They've got no aids at home. They drive, they cook, they clean, they still do all the outside work all by themselves. And that's got to be attributed to, looking after themselves physically now. So,
yeah. That, and so then, okay, so physicality. And do you feel that, like, for some people, like, obviously you did sobriety first,
yeah.
right? Can you think about people going, well, I'm not ready to give up the piss, but have you seen people start exercising as their catalyst and change to maybe make themselves feel better?
It's the same thing with my mate who has given up drinking for a little while. He's turned himself into a gym junkie as well. There's you got to set yourself little goals. You got to keep yourself going a little bit. I find, as much as you do say, stay in the present moment, have something that you are working towards as well. Or else you're going to get stuck going nowhere, I suppose.
There's and this sort of comes back down to the whole under nines football thing that we spoke about at the start. Is like, you have a little goal that it's like the way I explained it is like, do you know when you do an exam and people say you can't answer a question, come back to it later?
Yeah.
It's because in the back of the mind it's working it out.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you have a goal, you know what that goal is, and then so in the back of your mind it's figuring out how to get there.
Yeah.
And then you can then work on being present.
Yes.
And so that allows you to then focus on the moment. But if you've got absolutely no fucking idea of where you want to move to in the future, what your passions are, what you're driving to, it is super difficult to be present.
Yeah. You're just running on a treadmill.
You're just running on a treadmill, and you see people run on a treadmill every single day, burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
I guess if I were to flip it now to you, so you're 38, you got a few kids, you're going quite well, and you wanted to ask me a question now, because I'm no kids.
Yeah.
I still drink on the weekends.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I'm trying to, work out things for myself. Is there a question that maybe you wanted to ask me, or anything that you would recommend for me in my position now?
I'm curious about. I commend you on starting this podcast, and I think there is a big move now for men looking out for their mates. You know what I mean? What drove you to start this podcast in the first place?
Yeah. So I guess let's talk about that really quickly. So episode 1 spoke about a psychedelic journey I went through.
Yep.
But prior to that, and I haven't really spoken about it, but prior to that, when I was going through school, I really struggled with fitting in.
Okay.
Really struggled. Like, I would walk back from school, and I don't know why, but every time we moved house, it was always near the school we were living. So I'd always carry my backpack. I'd walk home up the hill and go, fuck, I don't have any friends, right? None. And I felt like I couldn't connect with people at school. I got bullied a lot. Racism was more of a thing back then than it is now. And it doesn't matter if you're the fittest kid in the school. It didn't change anything, I remember still getting driven in my dad's cab to school as well, which you could imagine boys would take the piss out of pretty easily.
The Indian boy getting driven
Indian
to school
boy,
in a cab.
it's an absolute recipe for disaster, right? Had a massive mole on my cheek when Austin Powers came out.
Yeah.
It was just fucked, and it was anything that would prey on my insecurities would get me.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things I wanted to create, I remember from a very young age, was a platform in which good values and inclusivity was really important. But also in a way that, not to soften people up, but get strong in the right way, in the right mindset. And so the reason why I started this was more so for people to be able to figure out the best way that they can get strong in their mindset, but also feel like they're inclusively part of this conversation. And so for me as a kid, I would have loved to have an older brother that I could have just listened to speak about, you know, different elements of don't think too far ahead, piece it, break it down. Or like, you know, I had a conversation about testosterone and sex and semen retention, things that as a kid or as an adult even, if you've never been exposed to it, you never be able to find these things out. So I thought the podcast was a really good way for me to be able to provide back to someone that's listening that may not know who to speak to or how to speak to that person to get that right advice. And then two, obviously for my own self to be able to not worry about what other people think of me. And that's a personal journey. But it's tough, you know. You're now my 18th episode, you know, and going through that, I think one of the big things now I'm facing is, do I just make this for men or do I make this for men and women? That's one of my thoughts, because it's like, I've had a lot of women go, oh, it'd be nice. It's nice to hear a man's perspective.
It's a good insight for the women. Find out how we think and how we talk.
Right. But there's a lot of men going, geez, I'd love to know a female's insight. And I was like, oh, well, shit, that would be good too. So that's where I'm at the moment, because obviously talking like this is cathartic for both of us guys to be able to chat. But on the flip side, I'm getting a lot of female viewers. And I also want to get a lot of male viewers, because I know how important it is for men too. So I am at a little crossroads of going, do I bring in female guests now? Even though my initial thought process was men for men.
Men only,
So that's interesting.
I think it's fantastic. And I think it's more of our generation trying to, you know, get rid of that stigma that men can't talk about feelings and men can't talk about shit because it's not manly. You know what I mean? And it seems like we've all had this, you know, whether it be from an Indian background or I've got an Italian background, and I'm sure it happened to every other race out there. You never really sat down and spoke to your parents about the shit that we can talk about, you know, on a podcast, you know, and project it to however many people are going to listen to this. So I think it's so important that, you know, people do talk about shit and kind of get rid of that taboo of, you know, what can and can't be said. And I'm lucky myself in my group of friends. I've got this group of friends where we've been friends since primary school. We've all played football together. We went to different high schools, but we've all still stayed friends. And we talk about a fair bit of shit, and we will openly say to each other, I love you. You know what I mean? And for a bloke to say to another bloke, I love you. You know, I don't think it happens in many male friendship groups, but that's, you know, I'm lucky that that's how close all us boys are with each other. So
we say love you, bro. Occasionally, you know, if you're getting real deep, it might come out. But I think that is like same with you. Now my friendship group is awesome. And there's nothing better. And if any guys listen to this, see how your mates react. Go, love you, bro. And if they have a little smile on their face, it's probably a good thing.
They want to say it back.
They want to say it back. You know, it's a bit awkward. You're like, it's all good. It's all good. And it is something that I think, you know, especially if you played a bit of footy and a bit of cricket, you know, play those sports, there's a lot of love in the change rooms, you know, how you going, mate, and all this stuff. But I guess when it gets translated out into real world conversations and into real world scenarios that are outside of the sporting arena, sometimes it gets shunned away.
And that's, you know, everyone used to have those conversations at, you know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, after a big sesh or something like that, whatever. It's different having those conversations with your mates when you're dead set sober. You know, it's, you know, because people use alcohol as kind of a masking agent, you know. They'd say something, oh, it was the alcohol talking, or they'd do something. It was it's the alcohol that made me do it. When you're dead set sober and you're sitting down having a one-on-one, you know, deep and meaningful with your mate, and you say shit that's, you know, real to each other, and you've got no excuses to fall back on. Like that's just you. That's you guys talking to each other. That's real talk. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, I'm having some real deep conversations with, you know, a lot of my mates about, you know, all different kinds of topics about, you know, business, life, you know, their wives, their kids, families, everything like that. and you get so much more out of it.
Yeah. Mark, I want to thank you for coming on today.
Thanks,
you know, it's so good to hear the journey of how it's all started for you, and then some of the little sprinkles that come on top with spirituality and woo-woo and all the rest of it that maybe you never saw yourself doing. I really hope that a lot of blokes that have listened to this, because, you know, you're a blokey bloke in the way that you converse, which is great because, you know, I think people will relate to that quite a lot. You come on after starting work at 1 a.m. today.
Yeah, sorry about the start of that.
No, that's all right. You know, but that's just, you know, that old school, like, stoic, like, yep, I'll fucking do it. I'll rock up. I'll show up. Yeah. And that's awesome. So, yeah, I do want to say thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
And, yeah, I hope we can have another conversation soon.
Really appreciate it, Steve. Thank you, mate.
Well done, man.
Thanks, buddy.